His touch consumed me entirely, fingers exploring my skin as though he'd been granted ownership over every inch. His voice still echoed in my mind, husky and desperate, claiming me as entirely his own. Every part of me had been surrendered without reservation. If you're enjoying this tale, remember to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more captivating stories. Your engagement fuels our passion, and we're excited to share what comes next. The memory of that evening remains vivid, my fingers quivering as I attempted to thread a needle beneath the kitchen's dim lighting. No garment awaited mending, no. Fabric stretched before me, requiring attention. I simply craved something solid between my palms, something that wouldn't slip away like everything else in my rapidly changing world. My mother rested in her armchair across the room, frail beneath a thick charcoal blanket. The gentle whir of her breathing apparatus filled our home with its relentless rhythm, marking time like a metronome, counting our remaining moments together. I watched her chest rise and fall with careful attention, terrified she might vanish. If I looked away, the tarnished silver band on my finger felt like my only anchor. Once brilliant, it had been dulled by my grandmother's years of hard labor in this very kitchen. When grandmother passed it to Mama, she would hold it toward the light, saying, "Clara, this ring doesn't contain riches. It holds our heritage, our honor." Yet honor couldn't cover the mortgage payments or purchase medication. It certainly couldn't prevent our family home from slipping through our fingers. And it definitely couldn't stop Father from pursuing what he called our soul salvation. The door's knock arrived, crisp and decisive, a single measured tap. Neither forceful nor gentle, as if the person beyond already knew tonight's outcome. I understood too. Father appeared in the doorway, wearing his pressed navy uniform, his expression rigid as starched fabric. Words came sparingly from him these days. His gaze flickered toward Mama before returning to me, heavy with regret and finality. "They're downstairs waiting," he announced. Not a request or suggestion, but a verdict. I rose slowly, pulling my cardigan closer like protective armor. Each step downstairs felt weighted, as though I was being led toward something beyond my strength to resist. The parlor held no celebration, no blooms, melodies, champagne, or candles. Only a bare wooden table where a gray-suited man arranged documents. "Miss Whitmore," his voice scraped against the silence. "I'm Samuel Dean, representing Mr. Graham Callahan." My pulse quickened as I glanced toward the entrance, half expecting to see him appear. But no groom awaited, no stranger ready to take my hand. Only this attorney and papers that seemed heavier than the table itself. Will he not be joining us? I whispered. Samuel Dean remained unmoved, adjusting his spectacles with a thin smile. "Mr. Callahan sends his regards. He has other obligations." He slid the pen toward me with 2 fingers, as if contact itself was beneath him. "Please sign here." I looked back at Father. He stood frozen behind me, jaw clenched so tightly I feared it might crack. No words of encouragement, no pleas, no assurance that this wasn't necessary. I faced this choice, or what they wanted me. To believe was a choice. Alone. My thoughts drifted upstairs to Mama. I could almost feel her delicate hand covering mine, the way she did when I was small and afraid of the dark. Her voice seemed to whisper, "You possess more strength than you realize, Clara." But strength felt absent. I felt like a game piece, being moved across a board I never agreed to join. I grasped the pen, my hand shaking so violently I needed both to steady it. My name blurred through tears that escaped before I could stop them. Clara Whitmore, just like that, it was finished. I became a Callahan through contract, not love, not choice, not even his presence. He hadn't bothered appearing. Samuel Dean closed the folder sharply and stood. "Arrangements have been made. You're expected at Callahan Estate tomorrow. No handshake. No final glance. He simply departed, the front door clicking shut like a lock sealing my destiny. I remained motionless, staring at my signature on the remaining copy. My fingertips traced the name as if it belonged to someone else. Someone braver, someone colder. Eventually, I climbed back upstairs to the kitchen where Mama still slept. Kneeling beside her chair, I pressed my forehead against her blanket, inhaling the lingering scents of lavender and old books. "I did it, Mama," I whispered into the stillness. I signed. The machine continued its steady hum. "Tell me I didn't trade our family name for nothing," I pleaded softly, knowing she couldn't respond. But I spoke anyway, needing to believe that. Somehow deep down, she could hear me dot. It's remarkable how a place can appear magazine perfect, yet feel like a mausoleum. The Callahan Estate dominated Charleston's historic district with its white columns, sweeping verandas, and towering windows that captured every ray of sunlight. Passers-by probably imagined the luxury of waking to silk sheets and coffee served by paid staff. Nobody prepared you for the silence, though. Not the gentle background hum, but the kind that swallows you whole, making you feel invisible and forgotten. Mrs. Callahan, this way. The housekeeper, Margaret, I think, gestured toward the grand staircase without warmth. She avoided eye contact, treating me like a package requiring delivery. I climbed alone, clutching my small overnight bag. I could have packed extensively, but instinctively knew nothing from my former life belonged here. The bedroom they showed me exceeded my family's entire ground floor. The bed was made so precisely it appeared untouched. 2 doors faced each other, one revealing a closet rivaling Mama's living room in size. The other remained unexplored. I didn't need to know what lay beyond. Standing in that cold, beautiful room, I realized something stomach-turning. I hadn't heard his voice once. Graham Callahan didn't return that night, or the next, or the one following. Days stretched into a week, each hour blending into the next like unwanted pages. Meals appeared outside my door as if I were a ghost haunting his home. Staff spoke only when necessary, addressing me as Mrs. Callahan, a title supposedly earned, supposedly meaningful, but I had earned nothing. I had merely signed papers. On the 8th night, I wandered the halls seeking anything alive. Room after room passed in darkness until I reached the West Wing's far end, where cedar and pipe smoke lingered in the air. The door stood slightly ajar. I shouldn't have entered, but I did. The study differed from the rest of the house, lived in, used. Books filled every wall, arranged not by aesthetics, but by wear, with cracked spines and bent corners. A single desk lamp glowed over scattered papers and half-empty scotch, while a painting dominated the far wall. I stepped closer, breath catching. It was her, not me, not some ancestor. My mother, perhaps 21, my current age. She stood, with head tilted slightly, eyes soft yet unreadable, dressed in white lace with hair pinned as she wore for Sunday services. Below the portrait, small gold letters read, Elizabeth Whitmore, commissioned by G.C.G. Graham Callahan. My knees nearly buckled. "What are you doing here?" The voice struck like stone. I spun around, heart pounding. Graham stood in the doorway, tie loosened, jacket over one shoulder. His face remained unreadable, cold as the marble floors. I was just ... I stammered. "This wing is restricted to guests." His words cut sharper than necessary. He didn't approach, didn't ask why I looked. Stricken, he already knew. "Why is her portrait here?" My voice cracked, too raw to hide the tremor. Graham's jaw tightened for the first time since my arrival. His eyes locked onto mine, hard and heavy. "Because not everything in this house belongs to me, Clara," he said softly. "Some things I could never possess." With that, he turned and left me standing there, more isolated than ever before. Sleep eluded me that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that painting, the gentle curve of her smile, the soft light in her eyes that mirrored my own from when I believed in fairy tale endings. Not everything in this house belongs to me. Some things I could never possess. His voice repeated like a cruel lullaby. Morning arrived, but I remained on the window seat, knees drawn to my chest, staring over manicured gardens I'd never walked through. A place that wasn't mine. A life that wasn't mine. I tried convincing myself the painting meant nothing, just forgotten art in an oversized house, but I knew better. I had heard it in his voice, seen it in his expression. The door knock startled me. Mrs. Callahan, breakfast is served. Margaret's voice carried formality, not invitation. I stayed put, arms tightening around myself. "I'm not hungry," I whispered, though she couldn't hear through the door. I waited until her footsteps faded before standing. My body felt leaden. Every limb turned to stone, but I had survived worse. I could survive this too. I slipped a sweater over my nightgown and crept back toward the West Wing, back to the Forbiddance Room. The door was closed now. I hesitated, heart hammering, but I needed answers. I couldn't spend another moment in this house with that portrait hanging over me like a curse. I pushed the door open slowly. The room still smelled of cedar, heavy with dust and quiet regret. The painting remained untouched, and beneath it on the desk lay a worn leather journal with cracked cover and frayed edges. As if carried too long, I knew I shouldn't, but I opened it anyway. The first page held one sentence, in deep blue ink. If circumstances had been different, I would have married you. Countless times. I slammed it shut, hands trembling. Elizabeth, my mother. The air felt punched from my lungs. "I thought I told you to stay away from here." His voice didn't startle me this time. Somehow I knew he'd find me. I turned slowly, gripping the journal like my only anchor. "Tell me the truth," I whispered hoarsely. "Explain what this means." Graham leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, expression unreadable but with something softer in his eyes. Something defeated. He approached slowly, stopping just short of where I stood. "It doesn't matter now." "It matters to me," I breathed. He looked away, jaw working as if fighting internal battles. "She was promised to me once," he finally said. "Your mother. We were young, foolish. I asked for her hand. She accepted." The words felt like blades in my skin. "But your father," he laughed bitterly, humorlessly. "He made it clear I wasn't worthy, that marrying into your family would bring nothing but scandal to their pristine reputation. So she ended it to protect you, to protect your name." I felt the floor shift beneath me. "And now you've married me instead?" I whispered. "Did you do this for revenge? Against her? Against us?" His eyes snapped to mine, sharp and pained. "No," he stepped closer. "I married you because I had no choice, or so I believed." I swallowed hard, words trembling on my tongue. What does that mean? He ran fingers through his hair, breathing as if each word cost him. "Your family is drowning in debt, Clara. Your father begged me to take you as my wife to save your reputation one final time." He paused, voice breaking slightly. "I'm like a fool," I agreed. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "So this is just business then? A charity case?" He flinched as if I'd struck him. "Is that truly what you think? What else should I think?" We stood there, the space between us thick with everything unspoken, everything neither could bear to voice. Finally, he released a shaky breath, stepping back. "Believe whatever you want, Clara, but don't return here again." He turned toward the door, back rigid. "And don't search for things you're not prepared to hear." He left me alone again, but this time felt worse than before. Because now I wasn't sure I wanted the truth anymore. I didn't return to the West Wing after that day. Not from lack of desire, but from fear of what else I might discover. The portrait, the journal, his confession, they had wrapped around me like invisible chains. I carried them everywhere, no matter how hard I tried to appear unaffected. I felt them stirring sugar into tea. I heard them in footsteps echoing through empty halls. I saw them in my reflection whenever I dared look in. Mirrors, throughout it all. Graham kept his distance. We shared the same house, walked the same corridors, but we might as well have inhabited different worlds. He never knocked on my door, never spoke my name, but the nights were worst when I felt his presence most acutely. Or perhaps when I allowed myself to miss him most. On the 12th night, something shifted. I sat on the bed's edge, brushing my hair out of habit, when I heard creaking footsteps in the hallway. I didn't turn, didn't dare hope. But then came the knock, one soft tap dot my breath caught as the door creaked open. Graham stood there, tie gone, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His eyes looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept in days. "May I come in?" His voice wasn't cold this time. It wasn't sharp. It was hesitant, human. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. He stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. For a moment, he simply stood there staring at the floor, uncertain what to say. "I shouldn't have let you find that painting," he whispered finally. "I shouldn't have made you think you were just filling her place." I swallowed hard, hands twisting in my lap. But wasn't I? He flinched, taking a step closer. "No, Clara. God, no." His voice cracked, raw and honest. I told myself that initially, that this was just duty, just business. But every day you were here. He ran a hand through his hair, breathing hard. "You weren't her. You were never her. You're nothing like her." My chest tightened. "Then why did you keep me at distance? Why did you make me feel unwelcome here?" He released a shaky breath as if the words burned his throat. "Because I was afraid. If I let you in, I wouldn't be able to let you go." He took another step, hands curling into fists at his sides. "And I don't think I could survive losing something I never deserved to have." I stood slowly, knees trembling. "What do you want from me, Graham?" He met my eyes then, really met them, as if all his walls were starting to crumble. "I want ... His voice broke again. "I want you to let me prove that you're not her. That you were never just a replacement." I didn't move. I couldn't. But then he crossed the space between us in 2 long strides, stopping just inches away. "Let me choose you, Clara," he whispered. "Please let me choose you." For the first time since entering this house, I let him. I reached for his hand, threading my fingers through his, warm, steady, real. His breath hitched as he cupped my face, thumb brushing the corner of my mouth as if I might shatter under pressure. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. But I didn't. When his lips finally met mine, it wasn't what I'd imagined. It wasn't fire or hunger. It was gentle, tentative, like he was memorizing something he never thought he'd be allowed to touch. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, and I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I melted into him, into the quiet ache I'd carried for days. "Clara," he murmured against my lips, "tell me to stop." But I didn't. I couldn't because for the first time, it wasn't about obligation. It wasn't about contracts or family names. It was just us. We moved together slowly, carefully, like 2 people learning to breathe again after being underwater too long. He touched me like I was precious, breakable. His mouth traced my jaw, throat, shoulder, every kiss anchoring me deeper into the moment. When he finally laid me back on the bed, his eyes never left mine. "I'm not here to take what isn't given," he whispered. "Tell me you want this. Tell me you want me." I swallowed hard, tears pricking my eyes. "I want you, Graham," I whispered back. "I want you to choose me." And that night he did. After that night, the walls between us didn't collapse immediately. They cracked. They shifted. But they didn't fall. Graham still spent long hours at his downtown office. He still closed his study door most evenings, and I still wandered the halls alone, searching for something resembling a future rather than a sentence. But when he came home, he came to me. Not like before, not like a stranger passing through. He sat with me by the fire. He asked about Mother's condition. He brought chamomile tea when sleep eluded me. Small things. Tiny cracks in the ice that had once separated us. I wanted to believe. It was real. God, I wanted to believe it more than anything. But deep down, something whispered that it could all slip away. That this house, this marriage, this fragile thread we'd started weaving wasn't strong enough to hold. That's when I heard the whispers. I wasn't meant to overhear them. I never would have if I hadn't wandered into the sunroom early that morning searching for my missing shawl. Callahan's about to collapse. A low voice, bitter and certain. Word is the Whitmore assets are at stake too. If we play this correctly, we can claim them both. I froze. The voices belonged to two men standing near the French doors. One was Edward Whitmore, my uncle, father's only brother. What about Clara? The second man, taller and sharper, smirked. What about her? She's just a pawn. She doesn't even know half of what her father signed away. My heart nearly stopped. I backed away carefully, not making a sound, but every step felt like glass under my skin. My uncle, my own family, selling us out. I waited until they left. Before daring to breathe again, by the time I reached Graham's downtown office, I could barely hold myself together. "You have to stop them," I choked out as I pushed through the door. Graham was standing by the window, phone pressed to his ear. He turned sharply at my voice, frowning. "Clara, what's wrong?" I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, shaking. "Edward, my uncle, he's betraying us. He's working with someone, planning to take the Whitmore estate and your company." Graham's face darkened, but he didn't look surprised. "I know," he said quietly. I blinked. "You know," he set the phone down slowly, rubbing his hands over his face, as if the world's weight was crushing his bones. "I've known for weeks. Your father made terrible deals before I ever got involved. Edward's been waiting for this moment for years." My stomach twisted. "Why didn't you tell me?" Graham leaned against the desk, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Because I thought I could fix it before you ever had to know. I thought if I kept it quiet long enough, I could protect you." Tears blurred my vision, anger burning hot in my chest. Protect me by keeping me in the dark? By letting me think we were building something real while you fought this war alone? His shoulders slumped, voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want to lose you before I even had a chance to keep you." I turned away, wrapping my arms around myself as if I could hold all the pieces from falling apart. "You don't have to carry this alone, Graham," I whispered. "Not anymore." When I turned back to him, his eyes were glassy, filled with something I couldn't quite name. "You'd stay?" he rasped, "even after knowing the mess I've made of this?" I crossed the room slowly, standing in front of him. "I didn't marry you for this house or your money or your name. I married you because I believed somewhere deep down you could be the man who'd fight for us." His breath hitched. "Clara ... I reached for his hand, threading my fingers through his. "Let me fight with you." And for the first time, he didn't pull away. It started with a single phone call. I'd seen Graham take hundreds since moving into this house, always sharp, always unreadable, pacing back and forth with that cold executive mask he wore so well. But this one was different. He didn't pace. He didn't speak. He just stood by the window, staring out over the garden as if the words on the other end were chipping away at him piece by piece. I waited by the door, heart thundering so hard I could barely hear myself think. He finally hung up. He stayed facing the window, hand pressed flat against the glass. "What happened?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. "Graham?" He let out a breath so heavy it sounded like it carried his entire life's weight. "It's over," he whispered. I crossed the room, reaching for his arm, but he pulled away gently, as if touching me might break him in half. "They filed the claim." Edward pushed it through. "He's using your father's debts to leverage control over Callahan Enterprises. By morning, my board will force me to step down." My mouth went dry. There has to be something we can do. He shook his head slowly. "There's nothing left to fight for, Clara." His voice cracked, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw him look small, defeated. I reached for him again, this time cupping his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. "We can fight together. We can—" He caught my wrists, grip trembling. "Don't you see?" His voice rose, raw and broken. "If I keep fighting, it's you they'll come after next. Your family's name, your mother's house, they'll take everything. I can't—" He swallowed hard, shaking his head as if the words were burning him alive. "I can't let that happen to you." Tears blurred my vision. "Graham, please." And leaving. His voice was barely above a whisper. "What?" I'm stepping down, walking away. "I'm signing it all over to them." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "You can't." "I can." He stepped back, dropping my hands. "And I will." I watched in stunned silence as he crossed to the desk, pulling a small leather folder from the drawer. He turned back to me, holding it out like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "This is everything I built. Every share, every contract, every piece of me I poured into that company." I shook my head, tears spilling over. "You don't have to do this. We can fight, Clara." He stepped closer, pressing the folder into my hands. "I spent my whole life fighting for something I thought would make me worthy. For a name, for power, for control." His voice cracked again, so low I almost didn't hear it. "That none of it matters if it costs me you." I clutched the folder to my chest, sobbing. "You don't have to choose between us and your life's work. I already have." His lips quirked into a broken, almost smile. "And I choose you." He leaned in slowly, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead, gentler than anything he'd ever given me. "All I wanted was you," he whispered, and then he turned and walked out the door. Out of the room. Out of the house. I don't know how long I stood there clutching that folder like it held my heart in its pages. Hours, maybe. Long enough for the sun to dip low, painting the garden in gold. Long enough for the tea Margaret had left outside my door to go cold. Long enough to realize I couldn't let it end like this. I ran down the front steps, heart pounding, scanning the driveway, empty. I turned back toward the house, my breath catching as I spotted something propped against the front door, the portrait of my mother. He'd left it there. No guards, no lawyers, no threats. Just the woman he'd once loved and the family he was walking away from, so I wouldn't have to lose it myself. I reached for the frame, my fingers tracing the edge as if it might give me the answer I couldn't find. And in that moment, I knew he didn't walk away because he was giving up. He walked away because he finally understood. What mattered most wasn't a name or a company or even a legacy. It was us, and I wasn't going to let him carry that alone, it. Didn't feel brave when I ran after him. It didn't feel like the kind of grand gesture books and movies promise you'll make when you finally realize what you have to lose, No. It felt messy, terrifying. My hands trembled so badly I could barely lock the front door behind me. My heart raced as if I'd run a mile, though my feet hadn't even touched the driveway yet. I don't know what I thought I'd find when I reached him. I only knew I couldn't let him walk away believing I didn't want him. Not after everything. Not after I finally saw the man behind the cold walls and sharp words. The night air clung to my skin like damp silk as I crossed the empty lawn. I could still see the lights from the house behind me, soft and golden in the windows, but I didn't dare look back. Not yet. I knew where he'd gone. I don't know how, but I knew. The old magnolia tree behind the north garden had stood longer than. This house had been in my family's name. Its branches curved low to the ground, wide and sheltering like arms reaching toward the earth. My mother used to sit beneath it when I was small, humming lullabies to herself while she read books in the afternoon sun. I found him there, just like I knew I would. Graham was sitting on the ground, back pressed to the thick trunk, elbows resting. On his knees, face buried in his hands. He didn't hear me at first, or maybe he did, but couldn't bring himself to look. I stood there for a long moment, watching the man I had once believed incapable of breaking finally fall apart. My throat burned. My chest felt too tight, but I couldn't turn back now. I took a shaky step forward, then another. He heard me that time. His head snapped up, and when his eyes met mine, something inside me shattered. "Clara," he started, voice already thick. "No," I whispered, holding up a hand to stop him where he sat. My breath hitched as I knelt on the grass a few feet in front of him, clutching the leather folder I'd carried all the way from the house. I pressed it to my chest like a shield, like I needed something solid to hold on to while my heart threatened to break open in my hands. "I know why you did it," I whispered, voice trembling. "I know you walked away because you thought you were protecting me and my family and my mother's name." I swallowed hard, willing the tears to stay down. "But you don't get to make that choice. For me, not anymore." Graham flinched like I'd struck him. "Clara, I never wanted to. No, listen to me." I cut him off, crawling closer on my knees, my voice breaking with every word. "You think I care about this?" I held up the folder between, shaking it in my hands. "You think I care about your company? About all these deals and contracts and signatures that you keep throwing yourself on like they're the only things that matter?" I let the folder drop to the ground with a soft thud, letting the weight of it fall away. "I don't want your name, Graham. I don't want your fortune or your company or whatever it is you think you're leaving behind." I reached for his face, cupping it in my trembling hands. "I just want you. That's all I've ever wanted." He let out a sharp breath like my words had knocked the air from his lungs. "Clara," he choked, hands reaching for my wrists, holding me like I was the only thing keeping him afloat. "I'm nothing without you," he whispered, voice breaking. I tried to walk away. But the second I did, I realized I didn't have anything left to give. Tears spilled from my eyes as I leaned in closer. "Then stop trying to protect me by leaving," I begged. "Fight with me. For us, for the family we can build, not the one we've been trying to fix." He broke then, his whole body folding into mine. As he wrapped his arms around me, burying his face in my shoulder and holding me like he was afraid I might disappear. "I'm sorry," he whispered again and again, his voice raw and shaking. "I'm so damn sorry for all of it." I pulled back just enough to see his face, my hands still framing his cheeks. "Promise me," I whispered, barely able to breathe. "Anything," he rasped. "Promise me you'll come home with me. Not to the company, not to the contracts, just to me." He nodded, so broken and open it nearly undid me all over again. "I promise," he whispered. We sat there until the sky turned to ash and the first stars blinked awake above us. And when we stood, hand in hand, walking back toward the house with nothing but each other, I knew we had already won. We had already chosen each other. And this time, no one could take that from us. The house felt different when we returned. wasn't the walls or the windows. It wasn't the soft hum of the old grandfather clock in the front hall. It wasn't even the flicker of candlelight that Margaret had left glowing on the side table, like she'd known somehow we would come back. It was us. For the first time since I'd crossed that threshold as a stranger, I wasn't walking into someone else's life. I wasn't a name on a contract. I wasn't a pawn on a board I never asked to play on. I was his wife by choice. And he was my dad. We didn't speak much that night. There weren't words big enough to fill the spaces we had both spent so long trying to ignore. But somehow silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like a promise. He led me to the study, the room I had once entered as an intruder, the room that held more ghosts than either of us had been willing to face. But the painting was gone. I froze. In the doorway, staring at the empty space on the wall where my mother's portrait had hung. Where I started, but Graham gently pressed his fingers to my lips, shaking his head. Softly, "It's not ours to carry anymore," he whispered. I blinked, the weight of that simple truth settling in my chest. He reached for my hand, threading his fingers through mine. "Come with me," he said softly. We left the house hand in hand, stepping out into the cool night air. He didn't stop until we reached the old guest cottage near the garden, the little white building that had stood locked and forgotten for as long as I could remember. He pushed open the door, revealing the dust and stillness inside. The air smelled faintly of lavender and cedar, like time had folded itself into the walls and waited for us to return. "I used to dream of living in a house like this," I whispered, running my fingers over the old wooden table near the window. "Small, simple hours." Graham stepped up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Then let's start here," he whispered. We spent the next week bringing life back into that little cottage. We opened the windows and let the breeze carry out the dust in silence. We scrubbed the floors, polished the old brass fixtures, and hung simple white curtains that fluttered like soft breaths in the sunlight. Margaret raised an eyebrow. The first time she caught us hauling boxes out of the main house, but she didn't question it. She simply started leaving 2 cups of tea at the cottage door every morning, as if she'd known all along that we belonged there more than anywhere else. Graham didn't return to the company. He didn't take the calls that came or the visitors who knocked on the door. He stayed with me, and in that little cottage, surrounded by chipped paint and creaky floors, we found something neither of us had ever really known before: peace. One morning, I woke before him. I lay there for a long moment, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, his arm heavy and warm across my waist. For the first time in months, there were no papers to sign, no lawyers to face, no shadows lurking in the corners of my heart. I slipped out of bed quietly, pulling on my sweater and slipping outside into the crisp morning air. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the sky was soft and pale, like the world itself was holding its breath. I walked back toward the main house, toward the place I had spent so many nights feeling like I didn't belong. I found Mama sitting by the window in her chair, hands curled in her lap, eyes half closed with sleep. "Good morning, Mama," I whispered, kneeling beside her. I rested my head on her blanket-covered knees, breathing in the faintest trace of lavender that still clung to her skin. "We're home now," I whispered. "We're really home?" She didn't answer. She hadn't spoken much in days, but her fingers, they